Alrighty, we are live, and today I'm going to be doing a top 5 solos character list with some honorable mentions as well. You know, this was the first video on my channel. I did this before, towards the end of season 10, and I thought it was pretty successful. Now that I'm kind of back in the swing of YouTube and I'm going to be posting a little bit more, I figured right now, in that kind of transitory period before Smite 2, kind of see some of the top gods at the current moment. Get a feel for what to play, what to practice going to Smite 2. I have played on the alpha. I'll be posting some videos about the alpha and whatnot. I'll be able to also give some more perspective. So some characters to practice now to play, and obviously be excited for when they come out in that future game. So these characters, I'm obviously going to go through the builds of these characters. I'll be putting timestamps below in the comments. And yeah, it should be pretty exciting here. So we're just going to get right into it. So our number 5 pick here is going to be Chaac. Chaac's going to be 5 here because number 1, something that Chaac really excels in, and this is generally why he's one of the higher end picks, although not a top pick, is that he's pretty dynamic in the ability that he's good into everything. Chaac has no official bad lanes. He's got this auto attack slow, he's got sustain, his second ability, Torrent gives him protections. So he really doesn't struggle in any lane. He's able to out sustain characters. He has very strong secure for buffs and good totem damage with his Thunderstrike Torrent combo. I recommend always maxing the Torrent, which is the second ability, because you will get, assuming you hit all 4 enemies, you'll get 100 protections. So it's very, very high. Mind you, enemies does not mean gods. If you two in a wave with the enemy god there, you're getting 100 prots of each. Does not need to be gods. Very important to note that. But yeah, just so much damage on this character. Passive is a little bit useless, I'll give you that, but really kind of okay into everything. It's very important as a soul laner to go teleport, right? That's kind of your core relic to go almost always, and on all of these characters that we'll be showcasing here today. And the second relic is obviously very important because as a soul laner, you have a couple of options you'll see people typically go. Sometimes they'll go blink, sometimes they'll go beads, sometimes they'll go thorns. Occasionally you'll see horrific or shell or maybe even aegis, but typically beads, blink, or thorns is that second relic. Now, with a lot of characters, let's just say Hercules, they're kind of forced very often that they have to go beads no matter what as their second relic, because if they don't go beads, then they get crippled and they get slowed and they get stunned and they just sort of die. They don't really have that safety to kind of cleanse themselves and immune out of heavy CC. Chaac is one of those characters that with his ultimate, with the mitigations he's getting and the prolonged CC immunity he's getting, Chaac really never needs to go beads. Now, if you go beads second on Chaac, it's totally fine, but that ultimate low cooldown, once you get some cooldown, obviously, and just how prevalent it is, also having these heals to kind of self-peel and slow people off of you and all of that, and these additional protections, means that you can kind of go blink like as a lock on this character second every single game, and as a result, do very well. So we're going to go into the God Builder here. One thing I want to mention is that there's a couple of different builds you can do for all these characters, and there's always going to be some variation depending on the game. That goes for every single character we go on, but I'm going to give one build. I'm going to first give the offensive build. So this build, every Chaac build at this point, I'd recommend to go Bluestone. Very important to get your early lane clear going well at level 1, get your 2 at level 1 as well. And yeah, so you want to go into Bluestone Brooch. Obviously, we'd just be going Bluestone, so we'll start it off like this. You go Bluestone, and this is again for the offensive build. You're going to go Tier 1 Soul Eater, and then you're going to get some health pots here. I believe with this build you can get 4 health and 1 multi. And that's your build at level 1. You're going teleport, obviously. So where is the relics? How does this work? I haven't done this in a while. Okay, perfect, perfect. So you get teleport here, and you're going to get blink, right? So cool, that's your relics. You can build both of those right away. And yeah, you're going to go Bluestone into Soul Eater. So what your build will actually end up looking like eventually, and again, for the offensive build, will be Bluestone, Soul Eater. After that, you've got 10% cooldown here, some sustain already. For the damage build specifically, you're going to go with Jotun's Wrath here and eventually get Jotun's Vigor, which is the glyph, and this glyph is giving you additional physical ability lifesteal, so you're basically doubling up on Soul Eater, and you're getting movement speed when you're below a certain threshold that constantly resustains or reapplies every 15 seconds for 8 seconds. So you have a 7-second off cooldown in that health threshold. Very good for being sustainful, and that kind of extra healing is effectively going to make you very tanky. Now, Chaac also, mind you, can go these offensive builds easier than other warriors because, again, his 2 gives so many protections. So you're able to play more offensive build-wise and still be tanky, right? After you get this, there's kind of a couple of ways to take it at this point. This is really where the build kind of varies just depending on the game specifically. A really simple way to kind of just build from this point on is to go some type of physical defense item here. The actual item itself isn't so relevant. As long as it's physical defense, this can be with or without cooldown depending on something that we're going to showcase in a second. But let's just say, hey, you say, you know what, I want to go into a breastplate of regrowth because it's a movement speed. I want to get more of that. Totally fine. You're going to want to get some kind of a magical defense item here, you know, to kind of match like the physical defense item you just went, right? And that can just be a pestilence, that could be a heart word, that could be not a Genji's this game, but it could be an Oni Warriors, something along those lines. You go pestilence here, and then your last item can just be something as simple as a binding. And this way you have, you know, really strong prots, 169. Again, doesn't look too strong, but when you're using your 2 in a team fight, expect to get from anywhere between 50 to 100 prots of each. So that's going to be 219 to 269 with the mitigation Zol. I mean, you're going to be feeling a-okay, and again, doing plenty of damage. You could also alternatively go something like Cloak here instead of Breastplate of Regrowth, and then go maybe Void Shield and then Binding. You know, that's a different build. I'm going to just quickly build that if you are interested, as long as you're kind of, and again, you don't need to, but if you can get a cooldown item in between these 3 defense items, you know, Cloak being 10%, just so you can get to cap cooldown easily and not need to worry about the glyph thing, that would be good. So yeah, this is the first build, right? This is the damage build. If you wanted to go something a little bit safer, make sure to screenshot that, by the way, I apologize. If you wanted to go something a little bit safer because you were a bit worried about the lane, something that you, not about the lane, but just about the game, again, I would recommend the aggressive build like that because I just think it's so powerful. But something safer you could go is you could go redstone. Eventually, instead of this star, you could just go tier 1 Frostbound, actually. Frostbound is very strong right now. Really good item. And the reason why is you basically can permanently slow because the cooldown is so short. So you'd literally go Redstone, Frostbound, you get a regrowth here, get a cloak. This is going to give you already a lot of prots. This is level 20, mind you, and this also, on this God Builder, it doesn't show actual protection amounts. Very important, so it would be higher. You're going to go Heartward here with the glyph. This is going to really kind of up your prots. It's actually, where is this here? Glyphs, boop, you're going to get that. And then your last item here, you're at 20% cooldown. Honestly, up to you. You want to go Pridwin, be my guest. You want to go Spirit Robe, get 10%, get a, not a 500 pop, but a blue buff with the, you know, mask. Totally fine. I guess going Spirit Robe is cool here. And with this build, you're going to be 192, 194. And that's without counting cloak stacks. I don't think that also counts Amulet of the Stronghold. And then you're also going to have Redstone. So you're going to be overcapped on prots with this build in team fights. So you're going to have double mitigations. You're going to be very tanky. You'll be slowing everybody to all hell with your attack speed slows, Frostbound, so even more movement slows. And then Redstone also gets you over the cap of protections because this is a protection increased by a percentage on this item. So your prots will literally be like 390 of each. Again, a safer build, less punish with it per se, but it's going to be a little bit safer in the lane, and it's also going to be safer in team fights. So, you know, a little bit maybe less pop, but you are really freaking hard to kill. Again, Chaac, great secure, great sustain, really strong character. We're putting him at 5. For number 4, this is a character that kind of is reverse in its identity in the lane, and that's going to be Amaterasu. Right now, auto attack solos are very strong. They kind of dominate the solo lane meta, and as a result, Amaterasu is the weakest of the relevant auto attackers, but still is one of the relevant auto attackers and is thus kind of, you know, fitting in this spot. The weakness of Amaterasu is simply put that her laning phase can be a little bit weak, especially before she gets her first item, first 2 items, and if you're behind at that point, maybe first 3 items. But what you really benefit on this character with is that you have not only this passive that effectively is going to make Bull Demon Kings, Fire Giants, Pyromancers, Gold Furies a lot easier to do, but you're also having this Heavenly Reflection ability, which full charge damage is 420 damage at rank 5, level 9, plus 60% of your physical power. So you're out securing literally everything except for like Hades, detonate with minions, and like Wukong if he like oxes and then uses his cudgel right after while you're knocked up. You're basically out securing everything, and as long as you can kind of play your secure, even if you get a little bit behind in the lane, you're able to just secure the silver camp, you're able to secure the Naga, you're able to outdamage on totems oftentimes. It's really just about playing kind of passive until you get your first item or two on. Now, speaking of what those items might be, there's one item I think in this build that's, excuse me, two items maybe. I'm gonna say one, but there is technically two items in this build that are quote unquote interchangeable. Um, if you want to I'm going to showcase that, but I'll give you guys the build that I normally do, and I'll show you where that build can be interchangeable. So for your start, you're just going to be going Warriors X, obviously. You're going into, this is actually where it's a little bit interchangeable. So Frostbound, obviously, very, very strong right now. Equinox, also very, very strong right now. I prefer to go Equinox because I think this item benefits the farming aspect a little bit more. But Frostbound is a fight item and benefits your fight a little bit more on the enemy character. Still also gives power and stuff, so isn't weak in the farming aspect by any means. But if you think that you can take an advantage with the fight and you need Frostbound to kind of get you there, again, I think the philosophy should generally be just to farm, so this Frostbound like idea is kind of nullified. But again, if you want to go, you can. Personally, I prefer going Equinox. It's up to you though. You're gonna get these two items. You'll have 250 gold left, excuse me, and you're just gonna get some health pots here in a multi. Whoopsies. There. So yeah, really, really simple. And again, if you went Frostbound, you just go like 4 health pots with it, and it would be cool. In terms of the build here, you're gonna go Animosity Axe, of course. You'll be going into Equinox. So again, this is Equinox or Frostbound, depending on what you want to play for. After that, you're going to go into Berserker Shield. At this point, you kind of have the next two items are the same, but it's just whether or not the order you go them in. If they have magical damage, it's very pressing. And obviously, if they had a Guardian solo, you'd go Shoguns instead of Berserkers here. But if there's magical damage that you think is irrelevant and worrying to you at that moment, just go with Shoguns here. And if you feel like you don't need magical defense right away, go with kin size here. I think through rank, through competitive and stuff, I found that going kin size is generally a little bit better. Again, you're a bit weaker towards the magicals, but you're able to exploit the solo lane a lot easier with this added damage, and you can really kind of wreck house and clean house, especially if you're even or ahead. You're just going to really be able to push your lead. Again, that's with the context that they have a physical jungle and solo, and you're not really rotating too much at that point. You go Shoguns here, and with this build, you're going to have pretty like low protections. That's kind of just the reality of picking a character like Ama. You're sacrificing some protections just to do really good damage. This character isn't the easiest character, but it's very, very strong if you can execute her well. Your last item here, and this is that second item, or second item that's kind of a conversation really, is going Pridwin here or regular breastplate. And the reason why this conversation is kind of occurring is this is very simply a we need cooldown here. Amaterasu, like some other characters we'll be talking about later, really needs cooldown. There's not that much cooldown in the game as much as there used to be. 500 pots obviously don't give cooldown anymore. So you can only really get it from your mask and the cooldown buff, which isn't that consistent. So this build at the moment is 0% cooldown, right? So you want to be able to get 20% as a nice boost. If you really wanted to, you could go Spirit Rope here instead for only 10%. But again, you have to be mindful that without your ultimate in late game, Amaterasu can be, a little bit precarious to play. And by the way, for relics, I'll just do this really quickly. You're going to go TP beads on this character every game. Never ever change that. There's no reason to. So we can just build those really quick. The reason you're going beads is because you're squishy. Like you just need to kind of have some mobility and some opportunity to live if you get gone on first. But yeah, so Spirit Robe, Pridwin, or Breastplate is going to be the thing. Generally, I tend to see myself going Breastplate more often. I go Pridwin if they have like maybe a magical jungle and mid laner. You know what I mean? Like a little bit more magical damage, or the magical damage feels a little bit more problematic than usual. That way, I kind of balance it out. More often than not, though, I end up just going this Breastplate. That gives me some cooldown. And at this point, the build is done. If you do want, you can sell Equinox late game for Spirit Robe to get a little bit more tankiness. So we're just going to put Spirit Robe here as a, if you sell Equinox, go for it. And yeah, if you don't, no worries. You can keep Equinox. It's really just up to the game. One thing you could also go is the Executioner, the anti-heals Executioner for Equinox late. Again, this is totally just on how the game state is going. And the same thing with Frostbound. You could do the same thing and sell those items for these protection items, because you will sometimes see on characters like Amma is, yeah, you're very dynamic, you do very high damage, but if they do have a lot of CC, characters that really are good into Amma like Ymir, Thor, Kabrakan, you might just kind of need a little bit more on the protection side of things to just survive and even cast in the first place. And as a result, you might want to go with Spirit Robe for Equinox, or again, binding, or just some kind of protection item, right? So that's the Amaterasu build. That's number 4. Um, Number 3 is not going to be an auto attacker, but I don't think it's a shocking reason. It's Sun Wukong. I think this character in Summation is just a better Chaac. He has a slightly better lane than Chaac, is slightly safer than Chaac. Um, has, I think, more like shiftiness just as a character, which he's less of a frontliner, but you kind of don't really mind. And yeah, just very oppressive, extremely strong, doesn't have any really bad matchups. Again, just like Chaac. And one thing Wukong has is his secure is extremely good. And so in a lot of ways, he's like Amaterasu, and just having a securing ability, being his cudgel, that, is just better than almost everything he's going against. And the difference is, though, is that Wukong doesn't have a bad laning phase, so you don't have to worry about spawning in behind or something like that more often than not. Also, this passive, just having extra power and protections in the lane, is ridiculous, especially in the first 5-6 levels. I mean, you're just like unkillable. So, in terms of build, again, there's a couple of ways to build this character. I'm going to give you basically the same build with a slight variation. That is going to just be, by the way, Relics here. We'll just do this first. Excuse me, I need to, a little bit all over the place. Relics here is going to be TP Blink. This is a character like Chaac because you have so much mobility and safety. And your ultimate is such a jail free card, you generally don't need beads. There are, I guess, rare instances where maybe you would go beads, but realistically, if you're building beads on Wukong, like something's probably going wrong and not going too well. If they have like something really excessive, like a Ganesh support, and they have, I don't know, some very high CC soul laner, I can't even think of one right now, but maybe. But again, I would go blink 99% of the time. You're gonna go for your build. You're gonna go Bluestone Soul Eater. I think this is core. You could build Wukong safe, quote unquote, and like rush a Glad Shield or something, but I think that kind of defeats the purpose of the character. You want to be using those protections from your passive and that additional power, along with your really good clear, buff secure, and just damage early, and you want to push that. So building a damage item to kind of supplement that, because again, your passive is kind of covering up for your lack of protections, I think is just the better way to push an advantage and create kind of separation in that lane to get ahead with. You're going to go straight into Bluestone Brooch eventually when you can, obviously. You're going to go Soul Eater. And the difference here, or like one of the differences here, is what you build next. There's a couple of things you can go. You can go Jotun's Glyph here, just like you did on Chaac. And if you were to go that build, you'd be at 30% with 2 items. At this point, you can go like, I don't know, let's say, literally just copy the Chaac build. You could go like a Glad Shield, a Pestilence, and a Binding. You could also go a Cloak, Binding, Void Shield, something like that. This is definitely a strong build, and it does work. So if you wanted to do something like this, you could just go Cloak here. I know going Cloak at this point seems a little late, but the thing is with Chaac, with Sun Wukong, they have really good Cloak application because they do have, like long-ranged abilities. Chaac with his one, Wukong with his one as well. They're able to kind of stack it pretty quickly, and at this point, you're still kind of just like loosely trading in the lane, so the stacks of your laner, be it physical or magical, should be pretty easy to attain, and then the other kinds shouldn't be too difficult. So you already have 40% with this, and then you could just go into binding Void Shield, or Void Shield binding, whatever it might be, and call it a day. If you wanted to build a little bit differently than this, the difference that I would recommend, again, I wouldn't recommend doing something like the tanky Chaac build that I mentioned. I would recommend just going, still playing into that damage thing, and literally just going here instead of going that Joens, just going a cloak or a glad shield here. We'll go glad shield first because this is again, like, if you're kind of struggling in lane, this is a bit better of a lane build in terms of just it being smoother. Jotun's glyph, like, in lane is crazy good, but if you're already behind, you're kind of getting slammed a bit. Getting like a safe staple cooldown defense item is always going to be strong. You're going to go cloak here, and you're going to go binding here. With this build, we are at 30%. Last item here is Spirit Robe or Brawlers. We'll see Spirit Robe. This is the tankier Wukong build. Either way, going to be very successful. Remember, these prots are not a true representation, as this cloak has not yet been factored in, and also your passive hasn't been factored in. So you're looking at, like, I don't know, 260 physical, 200 magical, 3100 health, obviously, looking pretty good and feeling pretty good. So yeah, that's the kind of Wukong safe build that I would recommend. So yeah, again, two things. I would recommend the damage build that I mentioned, but this build is a little more dynamic. So if you just feel like, hey, maybe I won't be able to cast as much, maybe I just want to play it safer because I know I can kind of just win. If I can just play it slow and not die and just do damage to the back line, disengage, by all means, go for it. Now, number two, and I was really debating when I made this list. I made this list right before I started this video, like literally 30 seconds before. And I was really debating if I should put Wukong at number two or put him at number three. And I decided for three because, well, I think that Wukong is probably more dynamic than the number two pick that I'm about to showcase here, in terms of he might be good into more things in like a whole team game sense. Like, he's good into maybe more backliners and stuff. I think the number two pick here has a higher ceiling of just like dominance and can just like win games outright through their objective damage, lane pressure, which is even better than Wukong's oftentimes, um, and just like pure solo potential. And that's going to be Bellona. Um, Obviously, Bellona just kind of wins lanes for the most part. Unfortunately, we have some losses here, but Bellona is very, very dominant in the lane. She's getting a slight nerf. This is being recorded on May 13th, so I know there's going to be a slight nerf coming out tomorrow that's going to be reducing the Master of War, I think, protections a little bit, but also movement speed. So basically, she's going to be a little bit slower and have a little bit less protections. Also, I think they're nerfing the Scourge by 10 damage. So this will be doing a tiny bit less damage. She'll basically be a little bit slower. She'll have like less movement haste, so to speak, when she's just playing the game. Even then, this character I would still put number two. I don't think she's going anywhere. Um, so those little nerfs that are happening, also, with Equinox getting that slight nerf, I don't think that matters. I forgot to address that. But yeah, none of those things I think actually really matter. I don't think those things change the meta at all. We'll talk about a character, that will be getting better in that patch shortly. But um, yeah, like, she's still the second best. You can make an argument that she might be the third best, but I think Bellona just does a little bit more than Wukong in terms of just pure dive and like how powerful she can be on that. She's effectively Amaterasu, except she wins every lane. So yeah, you're never gonna feel too bad with her. In terms of our build, mind you, one thing as a quick aside, really quickly, is I generally recommend on this character that the only weakness she kind of has is that her secure is a little dodgy on camps, and that's because her bludgeoning needs to wind up, and that's not consistent. So I just recommend maxing the Scourge. It's not the best secure in the world. It's going to do 240 damage next patch. It's 250 right now, plus obviously your physical power, but you max the Scourge first. I do it every game, no matter the matchup, and you have, ranged poke. You have very, very good, not very good, but you have quite good secure. If you auto Scourge, it's 300, 310 damage there effectively instantly, and Bellona can fight the other solo laner so easily and so often that, oftentimes it doesn't even matter so much what kind of what kind of secure she has, because the other person won't even be able to contest. In terms of matchups that are like good into Bellona, There really aren't too many that are great. I know I've mentioned for Chaac, Chaac's not bad into anything. Wukong's not bad into anything, and that persists. And Chaac can actually kind of do okay into Bellona because of like the anti-attack speed thing, but Bellona is just like another very dominant character. Not only does she not lose lanes, but she just flat out wins them. Totem control is fantastic. Silver Camp and Naga control is fantastic, and this is just kind of what you get with the auto attackers right now. So build wise, you go into Warriors X obviously to start. Here you have that decision, just like Amaterasu. Do you want to go Equinox or Frostbound? Um, I've been going Equinox more often, just because from a sustained perspective and like a pure attack perspective, I think when you have power and attack speed on an item, you're able to farm faster than if you just had power. People, for the most part, won't even try to fight you anyways because they just kind of can't. So I found Equinox to be a little bit maybe more consistent, but if you're in lower levels of play and stuff, and even if you're not, Frostbound can be as good, if not better. So that's very much an opinionated thing. So we're gonna stick with Equinox for now, but that is totally like up to your discretion, just like it is with Amaterasu. And in fact, it's better on Bellona than it is on Ama, just because you're actually able to apply it more in the early game because you're not like just hiding away. But anyways, you're gonna go this, and the build realistically is just the same thing as Ama, literally. So you're gonna go Animosity X. After Animosity X, you're going to go into um, Equinox. Again, Equinox or Frostbound. You're going to go into Berserker Shield. For the same reason as the Ama thing, you're going to go Kin Size here because, again, you're probably just going to be able to push that advantage more. You go into Shoguns. Your relics, by the way, will be beads, teleport beads. Really just need that safety. You could go Blink second on this character. It's definitely an option, but when you do this much damage, you just want some survivability. Because you're kind of like a pseudo jungler, and then Breastplate or Pridwen tend to go Breastplate because, again, usually the physical damage is a bit more prevalent. In this build, some potential trade outs. Obviously, again, Equinox slash Frostbound. We're gonna just put it here at the bottom so you guys know when you do screenshot this or whatever. Equinox or Frostbound is kind of your item there, and yeah, you know, you can sell that for Spectral if there's like crit, and that's a problem. You could sell that for Binding if you just need some more protections. You can keep it. You could go Spirit Robe as well to get to 30% cooldown and have your ult up even more, because again, this character is very much just like every auto attacker. Um, Not dependent entirely on their ult to function, but when they do have their ult, their only weakness of like being squishy and being to some extent immobile is completely negated, and then they just kind of become unfightable. So having that ult up is very, very important and is a really big deal. And yeah, so Bellona's number two. Before I go on, I'm going to give like two quick honorable mentions. I say quick here, and I don't know how long I'm actually going to spend on this, but I'll try to be brief. I'm going to give two characters that I think are very good. One of these characters is getting buffed next patch, so I'm going to include him. Because I want this to effectively really be for tomorrow, but I just had time today, so apologies for that. But our honorable mention number one is going to be Odin. This character is still very, very strong. I'm going to quickly just go through a build here. Going to go Bluestone. There's a couple of ways you can build Odin. I'm going to say we're going to go a tanky, safe build because I think that's just the way to go. Yeah, okay. I mean, sure. I'll be honest, guys. I don't really play a lot of Odin just because I don't like this character. His laning phase is kind of weak, and that's why I don't play him much. But in terms of like team fight value and strength, this is still a very, very strong god. You can go Bluestone Gladshield, or you could go like a Warrior's Axe into Blackthorn, especially next patch, possibly. I don't think Blackthorn is going to be ridiculous or anything, but it could be good. And listen, if there's a character you're going to go it on, it would be something like Odin. So I'll actually give you guys a build with Blackthorn. Just for the fun of it, maybe here. So yeah, you'll be going Bluestone. You could go Redstone, but I think Brooch is ultimately just a little bit better. Your relics are going to be TP Blink. And again, like I mentioned, Wukong, or excuse me, Odin's lane, a little bit weak, but in terms of his um, team fight presence, generally very strong. So if you can get out of that laning phase, you're gonna be feeling pretty great. You're gonna go Glad Shield here, and here, Blackthorn could work. I'm actually not even gonna give you guys a Blackthorn build because even with the buff next patch, I'm not sure it's gonna do too much. I mean, okay, I'll give you guys a Blackthorn build because I know people are excited to see it. I don't think you honestly need to go this, but like, you know, sure, I guess. Um, you can go Blackthorn here, get Cloak. At this point you're at 30% cooldown. Go into a Heartward, and then you are at 30% already. You could just go into a Spear Rope here. This way you're kind of just like pretty rounded out on prots. Doing really well with this. You're going to be very tanky. The reason why I don't really recommend something with Blackthorn with this build, and if you want to build it as a bridge item and then sell it later, I don't hate it. But I think if you go Glad Shield, Prophetic, Heartward, Spear Robe, like, you may as well just go a defense item at this point instead of Blackthorn. You could sell it at this point for something like a Void Shield, something like a Midgard, something like a Contagion, or even a Spectral, should you need it. But I'm going to, be in spirit of like a buffed item. The extra power the item is going to have is definitely going to give it a little bit more prominence. Could be strong. I don't know if it's going to be like a game-changing thing. I don't think it's going to be one, but this is kind of a way, at least for Odin, to have a little bit of fight potentially, kind of exceed in the lane maybe a little bit better. You could go Blackthorn before Glad Shield. The only thing you have to factor in with that build then is that you'd have as your tier 1 75 health and 10 power, as opposed to, I believe, 10 protections and 10 HP 5. So you're going to be with a little bit more power and damage, but you'll have less safety and health sustain. If that's a trade that you're okay with, by all means go for it. Just, I recommend be careful with that because, again, since your early game isn't that great, sometimes you just want to go a slightly more defensive option just to kind of survive. If you decide not to do that, or you feel like Blackthorn might just be a bit better for you first, by all means go for it. Again, I want to just kind of go by this character quickly. In terms of what you max on him, second or third ability is fine. Just kind of see what's going on. If you want to bird bomb a lot, maxing the 3 is totally fine. If you want to bird bomb a lot, maxing the shield is fine. I want to kind of move past these because I think they're good, but not like ultimately meta breaking. And then our honorable mention too is going to be Cucullin. This is only because he's getting buffed tomorrow. You're seeing an increase in his second ability movement speed from 5 to 9%. I believe you're seeing his Berserk, which is his passive when he transforms to the warped version of himself. He's getting a bigger shield soon. A bigger health shield, that's what it is. And then I think something else is changing with him. That's a slight buff. Maybe something to his ultimate. I honestly don't remember. But the point is he's getting some buffs, which I think are going to be pretty quality. To be quite frank, at the current moment, this character is terrible. But these buffs, I think, will move him to be in honorable mention territory. He'll be okay. Some other characters getting slightly buffed are things like Mulan, but I don't think Mulan's going to be, in the kind of needle yet. But Cucullin, being stronger, I think ultimately where he's going to suffer and struggle is that he's still quite bad into most characters. Like most of these good characters, like you do not want to play Cucullin into a good Wukong or a Bellona or a number 1 pick, or a Chaac, and not even into an Amaterasu that much. So it's kind of strange. Like you don't really have that much prowess. Like when you transform, you have some dominance, but then it kind of goes away. So it's kind of like back and forth on how valuable you really are. This is a build I had saved beforehand. Honestly, it is a good build. If you wanted to, you could go Blackthorn. We'll go for relics. You're gonna just go TP Blink, obviously, because you really need Blink on this character, or else you can't play the game. With Blackthorn being buffed, could you go it because there's like the niche aspect of like you get a little bit of HP 5 through it? I mean, I guess so. I don't think you need to. This build, once you get it online, is very strong. I think its early game can be a little bit weak, but if you wanted to change it up a little bit, you could go Blackthorn right after Bluestone. So you just go Bluestone, Blackthorn, again, your start would just look like, and I know this looks a little bit scuffed, so I apologize, but you could just go Bluestone, Tier 1 Blackthorn, 4 health pots. And by the way, your um, shard, I didn't mention this because I felt like it was obvious, but your shards on the characters, Chaac, you're going to go cooldown shard. Amaterasu and Bellona, you're going to go the golden shard, I believe it's called. And then Odin and Wukong, you're going to go horn shard, which is cooldown shard. So Kukulin, you could go horn or wing shard, not wing shard, excuse me. You can go the horn shard or you could go the golden shard. Just really up to you. So yeah, if you wanted to go Blackthorn on this character, you would literally just go Bluestone, Blackthorn, Mystical Cloak, Pridwin, Void Domaru. And then what I would recommend doing is actually selling Blackthorn for Dawnbringer. So either way, go Dawnbringer. Um, I can just add Blackthorn here just so we can kind of like see what this build would actually look like with this kind of new thing. But the reason why you want to go Dawnbringer, and I'll add that in just a second. This is kind of just so you can see like how the order would actually look like. With this build, you have 30% cooldown, which is quite strong. You know, you can get that extra 10% from, you know, just something else really quickly. Instead of going Void Domaru, by the way, you could just go Heartward. This just kind of makes that so that your Mystical and your Pridwin do a little bit more damage. So by no means do you have to go with this Void Domaru, but if you want to kind of just enhance your damage a bit, go for it. Very tanky with this build. Again, I know it doesn't show too much here, but when you have Redstone with your ultimate, all this movement speed you're going to be having soon, I mean, you are really a menace in team fights. Um, Again, I don't think Ukolin's actually going to be crazy good, but I think he'll be better. And even right now when he sucks, like, you get a Blink ultimate with this build, you are going to be very potent. Dawnbringer is... Can I read this item, or are they just, like, not going to let me? Okay, here. When your ultimate is finished casting, you gain protections and movement speed. Or, excuse me, your protections and movement speed are increased by 10% for each enemy god within 55 units, each stacking to 3 times. Realistically, you're using this when you're blink ulting, so you're getting a 30% increase of movement speed and protections. And when you factor in that you're going to have redstone increasing your protections, cloak, and all of this, you know, just defense and stuff, like, you're going to be double mitts in the back line with a lot of damage, a lot of attack speed, and a lot of attack speed reduction for them. Mind you, with the Pridwin pop and stuff, this build is very fun, very strong. And yeah, I would recommend it. You know, you could go Brooch on this character instead of Redstone in this build, but I think that this is honestly a little bit more fun and ultimately like a little bit more valuable. So if you are looking to play Kukulin, again, you can go this Blackthorn, but I would always sell it for Dawnbringer late because this is really the only character, this and maybe like Pele, that actually use Dawnbringer effectively, and they absolutely like take advantage of it. So yeah. Um, for our number one pick, we're finally there. It's taken us a while, I know. Our number one pick is going to be Osiris, and this obviously, as the rest of this list, is going to persist onto the next patch. This is the final and best auto attacker in my opinion. I'm going to showcase why. And funnily enough, he's really not actually a character that I would recommend building as an auto attacker. Um, I think you see a lot of people say Osiris is a bad late game, he falls off. Amaterasu, you know, in that aspect is so much better, even if her laning phase is worse. Bellona is so much better late game and has a comparable early game. You know, and the comparable early game part is true, but this character I truly do believe is the best late game solo, and it's not particularly close. It just comes down to how you build. What you typically see on Osiris is you see people go auto attack builds, they go the Amaterasu build, they go the Bellona build, and there's a big reason why fundamentally that is bad and different than it is, you know, on those characters. So really quickly, I'm just going to kind of explain it. Bellona and Amaterasu are very much auto attack characters by their kit design. They have things in their passives that benefit from auto attacking. They have um, abilities that kind of like synchronize with their auto attacking. Amaterasu with the mirror, Bellona with literally all of her abilities, right? Block stacks and scourge healing and all that crap. So they're very much characters that need to function through getting off a lot of auto attacks, and as a result, you build them auto attack based, and it's very strong, right? Osiris, though, has cleave autos, but that's about it. He really doesn't function like an auto attacker in terms of like what else he provides. So you don't need to build him like you build those other two characters. I think people build Osiris like they build Amma, like they build Bellona, because they're thinking, hey, my laning phase is going to be good and I'm just going to like own the game. And then they feel really stuck and awkward later because they're just like, they don't have their passive up and they're just kind of dying. And like, again, you can win fights and do a ton of damage and like occasionally do really well. And there might be a little bit more upside and carry potential with an auto attack build just because, again, you can like do objectives and stuff quicker. But ultimately, it's just not the better build. So I'm going to give you guys the better build. I recorded a video on this with a very shitty thumbnail. I have somebody who's going to be doing thumbnails for me now. So I'm very excited for that. No more of those crap thumbnails. But I would recommend to watch that video before seeing this one so you can kind of see why I think this character is so great. But yeah, to start with, his lanes are incredible. Doesn't struggle, doesn't suffer, does really well. The only matchup that's kind of like a difficult one is Bellona, but even then, it's a skill thing. You can win this as Osiris like 100%. Just kind of auto attack. Make sure you use your third ability and kind of kite in and out. You're going golden shard on this character as well, mind you. So for your build at level 1, what we're going to do here is it's going to look initially like the other auto attack builds, and we're going to continue with this trend of going Axe into Equinox or Frostbound. This character I've exclusively gone Equinox on. Can you go Frostbound and should you go Frostbound? I think as the other two characters, it just depends. If you want to be my guest, I think generally like if you're going to go Frostbound, go it if the other character's going Frostbound that you're against. If not, just go Equinox. But again, you can always kind of just go Equinox or Frostbound and feel okay. So again, the build starts out the same. In terms of relics, we'll get to that in a little bit. But you're going to be going Sundering Axe on this character, not Animosity Axe. You're going to go into a Equinox here. After that, you're going to go into a Glad Shield here. This gives you a little bit of cooldown. You're going to add to that cooldown with going a Cloak. So now you're at 20%. You're going to get Heartward. Heartward here, very important to note, is not only for the Cloak kind of benefit and adding to Cloak and being strong, obviously, in terms of just getting that double stack passive efficiently and effectively, but it's also to give yourself MP5 because at the moment with these first items we have no mana sustain, and that is a problem because if you're poking a lot you're going to run out of mana, and that's not a good feeling. So Hardware kind of covers that base. And then our last item here is actually going to be Pridwin. In terms of the upgrade, I would go the red Pridwin. And with this build, you see 204, 184. With Prophetic Cloak, you'll have more. Very, very vital moment, though, here is that you're actually going to be selling this Equinox, and you will be selling this Equinox for Stone of Binding. And the reason why you'll be selling this Equinox for Stone of Binding, and we're going to have to actually redo this build a little bit here to kind of showcase everything, is that once you get Stone of Binding, and again, I know it doesn't show here, but once you have Stone of Binding, once you have Cloak stacked with this build, you will be at, I believe, 539 protections total, which means you'll have the double stack Cloak Prophetic, um, you know, value. So you'll have double mitigations, which, mind you, is not in correlation to your passive. So you'll have double mitigations from Cloak. You're also going to have your passive mitigations. And mind you, with this build, again, no auto attack in it. So you might be wondering, well, like, how do you play this? What do you do? Why is this build so good? Just because I'm unkillable, or supposedly unkillable, it doesn't really mean anything. And to some extent that makes sense, but this is where Sundering Axe comes in value. Really what we're doing here with this build is we're literally just playing to poke. That's it. It's so simple. You just walk up, again, when Achilles was super good, when Nike was super good at the end of last season, and I was talking about this in my top 5 video. You can go watch. It was my first video on the channel. Literally just play through Sundering Axe Poke. This strategy is alive and well on Osiris, is still alive and well on Nike and Achilles, but they have much weaker lanes than this character, to the point that I don't even think they're in the top 5 spots. But yeah, you literally just poke. That's all you have to do. We're literally just going Equinox or Frostbound, so we have early game clear speed and farm, so we're able to get this somewhat slower build online. But the moment you get this build online, it is just lights out. You can't really lose. Obviously, you're going to lose sometimes, but you're just so powerful. In terms of what abilities to max, I would recommend maxing the 2 first on this character just because it's a bit more consistent, better secure as well. You could max the 1 though. But your protections are going to be super high, obviously, with double mitts. And because you have your 2, you can just Sundering Axe people through walls from like max range. They generally can't hit you back. You get good vision around Fire Giant, and you just spam poke the frontliners. You're going to force them low. You're allowed to play pretty loose in terms of relics on this character. Going TP Blink is fine, but I actually think it's more maddening and generally more effective to actually just go beads. And it's also, I think, it duly provides another function, and that's this build is very much a build of, I can't build the relics for some reason, but this build is very much a build of attrition and patience. Um, you have to be mindful that when you're building this kind of a build, you don't have the one shot potential of just like killing somebody instantly more often than not. Now listen, I will say with Pridwen with binding and Glad Shield, if you ult on somebody and Sunray X obviously, if you ult on a backliner, you will solo them easily. It's not even close. You just ult auto 1, auto 2, and then user 3, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. Like they're dead. So you're gonna get the kill. But if you can just play the game and take the imbalanced trades of just Sundering Axe in the frontliner, the backliner, whoever it might be, poke them out a little bit, give your team good vision around that Fire Giant with the wards and just being so tanky that nobody can really stop you. You have this beads here to effectively make it so that while you're already unkillable, you're just even harder to kill. So they really just can't do anything. And then you just kind of slowly wait for somebody to need to back, wait for somebody to feel forced out. If you really want, you could just ult in, get damage off on someone, disengage, and then continue Sundering Axe, and then you just get fire, then you get everything, and you can just kind of zone people. Nobody can 1v1 you on this character. The best things are like auto attack junglers, but even then you have so much kiting potential with your first ability, with your second ability, attack speed reduction, your tether, mitigations already, the whole 9. If you were really struggling into a heavy auto attack comp at this point, honestly, instead of keeping Glad Shield, you could sell Glad Shield for Midgard. The reason why you don't want to sell something like Binding is because then you would lose your 539 double mid status. So if you sold Binding, you'd lose way too many prots. But if you sold Glad Shield, you would be totally fine. We lose a little bit of cooldown, but that's kind of okay. You're at cap at this point, so who cares? If you're 30%, it's still fine. And yeah, character just can't lose lanes, really, with this build either. So you're farming fast, you're unkillable. In the history, unfortunately, I do have a loss or two, but we've been going this build every single game just about, and it is quite good. And yeah, just going beads and like, I know these are just like random ranked games, so you're gonna kind of have to take my word for it. We did lose this one, which is ironic, but the damage is always extremely high, as you can see. Mitigated this game was 130k, doesn't show on this, and the reason why is because you're not really getting as much damage in the lane maybe as an auto attack build would do, but you're just so maddening with your ability to just kind of sit there and just spam your second ability. Noticing we're having top damage in the lobby every single one of these games, just about, um, even in losses. So yeah, just super strong. You see, this game we went Midgard instead of Glad Shield because they had Nemesis and Erlang, but regardless, can't really go wrong with it. Best late game solo pick by far. Super dynamic, doesn't worry about the issues Bellona and Ama do. Your ult's always going to be up to really powerful. If you've gotten to this point of the video, I want to thank you guys for watching. I'm going to be, posting more solo lane videos and all of the sort, and I really appreciate coming around, sticking around for this. Again, timestamps will be in the description for anything you'd like to see, but if you made it to this point, really appreciate you. Let me know in the comments of any characters you'd like to see. I've got a Tsukiyomi video that by the time you're watching this is either already out or will be coming out very shortly. So I'm excited to showcase that, and obviously I'll get a Kukulkan video for his buff coming up soon. Anything else, let me know. Any questions or comments, please feel free to drop that below, and I will respond to them as quickly as possible. Thank you guys and have a wonderful day.